Irma to cyber attacks. Representative Michael McCaul of Texas is responsible for making sure we're prepared for these threats as the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee. Monday marks the 16th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, and Representative McCaul will be chairing hearings the following day to address the wide range of issues we face. And he joins us now from Washington. Welcome to the program, Representative. Good to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Good morning.
So, as I said, there's a lot to talk about. Let's start with exactly what's on the news today in the form of Equifax and this report that as many as 143 million Americans may have their personal data subject to a cyber attack. I know you've been very outspoken about cyber attacks, but what can the government do when it's a non-governmental entity, such as a private company?
Well, I think this collaboration with the federal government and the private sector and the critical infrastructures, whether it be energy, whether it be financial, water, this compromised, as I understand it, a very significant percentage of the United States population and also credit card information. And we're seeing this more and more. The trend is not going down, it's going up. This latest breach, this hack, is very alarming to me. And what we're trying to figure out right now is the intent, motive, what country, nation, state could be behind this, or just criminal actors. Are they simply stealing this information for financial benefit, or is this one of these big data thefts that we saw China do when they stole 20 million security clearances and then Anthem million healthcare records? So needless to say, we're in the investigation phase right now, but we're taking it very seriously.
Well, Congressman, I'm sure you're taking it seriously, and of course the first thing you react to is what this could mean geopolitically. Is it China? Is it Russia? But more fundamentally, for these private companies, what can the government actually do, to David's question, to make sure that they spend enough on security themselves?
Well, you know, we can only mandate so much. We do encourage companies to purchase cyber insurance. I think the market will drive itself to get to that point, but we are constantly interacting with the private sector to protect itself. But we also work with them. We can go in, Department of Homeland Security can go in and do a diagnostic check in terms of their systems, how safe and secure are they, and we're constantly working with them to do that. We have the 16 critical infrastructures that we work with day in and day out. I passed a cybersecurity bill that provides for information sharing on these malicious codes so that companies can know in advance what is the threat and how can I best protect myself from that threat, knocking on my door, getting into my networks. But this is an ever-evolving, very quickly evolving threat that we need to stay on top of.
Well, another threat that we need to protect people from today is we're mindful of Irma, about to hit Florida. I noticed that hurricanes are one of the things you specifically mentioned in your announcement of your hearing next week. What communications have you had about what steps are being taken to try to protect the people, as well as the businesses, but the people of Florida right now?
I think, you know, in Texas, in the Harvey example, I think one of the best things the president and my governor did was to sign a disaster declaration in advance, which allows FEMA and other key assets to pre-position themselves, including the National Guard and active duty. One thing they've done, I talked to the vice last night, they've waived what's called the Jones Act, which will allow military naval vessels to come into the Florida area to provide the immediate relief and assistance that we know is going to happen. This is not a question of if, but when Irma hits. It's a Category 5, and we know from accounts from the islands that this is one of the most destructive hurricanes they've seen in their lifetime.
To move on to yet another threat, because there are so many, North Korea. North Korea is very much in the news with President Trump speaking out again yesterday. What role, if any, can your committee and Department of Homeland Security play in trying to protect the homeland from a possible nuclear threat?
Well, it is a threat to the homeland because now they have ICBM capability that can hit the United States. Now they have a hydrogen bomb. They have a nuclear warhead they can put on top of these ICBMs. They are moving at a far faster rate than we thought originally they were capable of doing. And so I think a couple of things. I saw Secretary Tillerson again last night. I think the sanctions, the diplomatic pressure, particularly with China to cut off, to have economic sanctions on North Korea. I think everyone agrees that military is the last option when you have tens of thousands of Americans in South Korea, including our troops. But that option does have to be on the table. I think as well is that these missile defense systems that can intercept the missiles midair like a bullet hitting a bullet, which, believe it or not, our technology is getting better now. We have to perfect that to protect the United States in the event Kim Jong-un goes rogue on us. And it's very unpredictable. He's a very unpredictable man. He's very young. And he's very reckless. And I think in terms of the biggest to national security, it is a nuclear power like North Korea that has this capability that could potentially go rogue on us.
And finally, Congressman, we're mindful of the fact that Monday will mark the 16th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. Bring us up to speed on where we are. We don't hear very much, actually, anymore about threats from things like Islamic State or Al-Qaeda, which has not gone away. How do you assess that threat to us at this point?
Well, I'll be giving a talk on this in about 5 minutes. You know, it hasn't gone away. I do think with our military successes in Raqqa and now in Syria, we have been able to shrink the caliphate. And when you do that, you also counteract any external operations out of that region into the United States to protect the homeland. So what we're doing over there does matter in terms of protecting the homeland. But it's a global ideology perpetrated over the internet. It is moving, it is very strong in Pakistan and Afghanistan, which the president has tried to address, but also safe havens in northern Africa, you know, like Libya and Tunisia and other places. So while I think the trend line is getting, I wouldn't have said this 2 years ago, certainly, but I think the trend line is getting better in terms of threats to the homeland with respect to radical Islamist terror. What I worry about is the continued spreading of this radical ideology through the internet globally, which will not go away in my lifetime.
Okay, on that note, thank you very much, Republican Congressman Michael McCaul, for joining us today. Jonathan.